Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the work session of the City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, to be held September 10, 2019 at 6 p.m. We need to take the roll. If we could have a deputy clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Althouse.
Here.
Councilmember Matthews. Here. Councilmember Hulse.
Here.
Councilmember Naren.
Here.
Councilmember Howgie. Here. Vice Mayor Henry.
Here.
And Mayor Linsky.
Here, thank you. And what I would like to do, if it's all right with the crowd, is just to take a brief moment of silence here to remember the events of 9/11. So if we could just bow our heads for a second. Thank you. So we have a big crowd tonight, a lot of folks in the room. If you're interested in addressing the council on this issue, then there are blue forms up here that you can fill out, and everybody here tonight will have an opportunity to address the council if you choose. There's just one item for discussion tonight, which is discussion and direction to staff regarding solid waste collection services and recycling options. So again, because it's a large crowd, I just want to go over just a few things briefly. If you don't know, bathrooms are out in the hallway here. It's definitely going to be a long evening, so you may need to know where those restrooms are. The other thing, like I said, is everybody is welcome here tonight, and everybody is welcome to address your council. And this is a public meeting, and so we have certain protocol. You won't be able to shout out questions from the audience. You'll be able to come up to the podium. You'll be given 3 minutes to address the council. I'll call you up one by one, and we'll kind of get a queue going so we can work through everybody quickly. This isn't, Dancing with the Stars or anything. There's not a plot-o-meter, so I would really ask and encourage everyone just to hold your applause. There are many people who are very passionate about this issue, which is evidenced by the fact that we have standing room only here today. But again, we're here to really weigh out all the options, definitely hear from our constituents, all of you, and this is not a difficult conversation for any of us to have up here. So I'm really relying on you to help this conversation move along better and respectfully. So again, it's important that you all are here, and we want to hear from each and every one of you, but I would ask that we just do this with respect and kindly address your council directly. Don't shout out things from the audience, and don't address people behind you. Let's try to maintain some protocol here to get through the meeting quickly. And I'm not feeling well, which is another thing, so I may wind up losing my voice, in which case the vice mayor will step in. But anyway, we're going to get on with the show. Thanks again for everyone being here. And if we could have Mr. Scott come up to make a presentation.
Yes, Mr. Scott, if he could come up. Mr. Mayor, Council, back in April, you guys asked us to look into the solid waste and our roads and what we could do to help preserve our roads. So I won't steal any of Mr. Scott's thunder, but we're here back with that information to present tonight. I just want to emphasize, because it's not in the front part of our presentation, is that a lot of this discussion is based on our strategic plan, which called for the preservation and the development of our infrastructures. And roads are an important part of that. He's going to talk about the roads and how much money we need to fix them and those kinds of things, but this is not away from the strategic plan that the council approved back in earlier in this year.
Right, and just to follow up on that, this item has been discussed 2 other occasions since I've been on council. So it is something that does keep coming back up. I get asked that question a lot, why are we discussing this again? This council's never voted on this issue. It's only been brought up during this work session. No action will be taken tonight. So we won't be voting yes or no on whether or not to go with a single hauler method. We'll be giving direction to staff to either pursue a request for proposals, which Mr. Scott will go over, or to take no action and just keep things the way that they are. But as new councils come in and they create a new strategic plan, you'll find that some of these issues do come up again and again, and it just sort of indicates the importance of and the commitment from council to try to do everything that we can to preserve our infrastructure, and that is why this is coming up again for discussion. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you mentioned, we're here today to talk about solid waste and recycling and sustainability efforts. A quick overview of what my presentation is going to be tonight, and then of course we'll hear from the public. We'll talk about what the council directed us to do when we met last April. We'll talk about the sustainability efforts that have been made or we'd like to make as part of this program. We'll talk about solid waste trucks and their impact on residential city streets. We'll talk about the best options based on those priorities that the council gave us. And then of course we'll ask you, the council, what you'd like us to do next. So in April, the city council met and we felt like you gave us 3 directions. Those directions were reduce the impact to our residential local streets, reduce the amount of materials that are coming out of the city of Cottonwood going to landfills, and increase sustainability efforts and sustainability events in the city. I want to talk about sustainability real quick because it's a broad term, means a lot of things. I think a lot of people jump right to recycling, and yes, recycling is definitely part of sustainability. Road longevity is definitely a part of sustainability, not only because we're not milling up our roads and taking that material somewhere, but also we're maximizing our tax dollars. Household hazardous waste is a big part of sustainability, and we're going to talk about that later today. Household hazardous waste, we've had events in the past. It's a very expensive event, but we'll talk about how we might try to incorporate that into whatever programs we develop. Talk about neighborhood cleanups, especially something that keeps coming up among the community is curbside cleanups. Many of you remember that in the past we've had curbside cleanups. That event kind of went away. It's more of like a free dump day, but we'll talk about how can we try to bring that back. As well as any option that we include, we'd suggest we reduce waste sent to landfills as much as possible. So I want to talk about recycling real quick. That's a controversial topic lately. Interesting enough, the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, the USDN, did a study, and they came up with the top 10 best practices when it comes to sustainability. Interesting enough, recycling is not in the top 10. And I think that had to do with several factors. A big part of that might be how difficult it is to recycle today, mostly due to the value of the final product that they're trying to sell. Many of you know that the city of Peoria just canceled its recycling program. The city of Surprise just canceled its recycling program. Even Sedona Recycles was struggling to make money at their Cottonwood site and pulled out. Recycling is a difficult subject nationwide right now. On a positive note, the USDN, when they did that study, the top 10 best practices, Cottonwood is doing 4 of those top 10. One is public transit. As many of you know, we have one of the best public transit systems for a community our size in the state. We're constantly looking at bicycle and pedestrian facilities. We're looking at electrical vehicle stations in Cottonwood. And they also mentioned renewable energy, photovoltaic solar systems, all 4 of which we have throughout the city of Cottonwood. So 4 of the top 10 we're already doing from a sustainability effort. So solid waste trucks and residential streets. So solid waste trucks do have a significant impact on our neighborhood streets. One solid waste truck, according to a 2009 study by a city in Michigan, an engineering study in Michigan, one solid waste truck is equivalent to somewhere between 1,000 and 1,400 passenger cars. Now, it's not just the weight. A lot of people say the weight difference is not that much, and that's very true. A fully loaded solid waste truck is about 64,000 pounds, whereas according to the EPA, a maximum size of a passenger car is about 8,500 pounds. So it's not just the weight that's the impact on the roads, it's the stopping, the starting, and the idling. And the idling is actually a big problem. For example, when we design a bus stop, a pull-out bus stop, the pavement section is about 3 times as thick as a standard road, because that bus is sitting there idling on that bus stop, degrading that pavement. Today, we have we have 3 commercial haulers who provide services in the city of Cottonwood. 2 of those haulers actually do 2 trips a week, one for recycling, one for trash. That equates to 5 trips per week per hauler, and then 2 sides of the road, meaning we have 10 trash truck trips per week on our roads. If we use that 1,000 to 1,400 passenger number, you're looking at somewhere between 10,000 and 14,000 passenger car trips on our city residential streets per week. Now, and I apologize, that picture didn't turn out very well, but point turning is another concern. Obviously, as a trash truck or a solid waste truck is jockeying in to pick up a can or a container, they're doing a lot of point turning. That image that you see there, disclaimer, that's not a Cottonwood street, and I don't think it's necessarily due to solid waste. That's just point turning on a chip seal road. Also, I'd like to clarify, a lot of people say there's a lot of other vehicles, heavy vehicles on our city streets, and that's definitely true. But I think the emphasis, if I'm reading the council correctly, the emphasis from the council was focused on our local or our residential streets. The engineering term for those streets is local roads as opposed to a collector street. Many people just call them our residential streets. And that's opposed to our collector streets. Our collector streets are built to a much higher standard. For example, our local city streets, those would be, for example, maybe Verde Heights, parts of Verde Village Unit 8, maybe Old Town off of Main Street, the neighborhood near the cemetery. Those are examples of, it's a ½ inch of a chip seal over not very much of a base. Compared to a more modern subdivision, say Cottonwood Ranch or Gray Fox or Mesquite Hills, those are probably 2 inches of asphalt over a substantial 4 to 6 inch base. Compared to a collector street, on the other hand, a Willard, a Main Street, a Mingus Avenue, the last 5 collector streets that the city's built, it's 4 inches of asphalt over a 6 to 8 inch base. So you can understand, we're talking about different streets here. We're not talking about the collectors that do get the cement trucks and the construction trucks, everything else. We're talking about the local residential streets. So in 2013, the city did an inventory of those local residential streets. We have 53 lane miles of streets, of those local residential streets. In 2013, the estimate to reconstruct all of those streets was about $80 to $90 million. Now I want to emphasize that's without curb, gutter, sidewalk, not including the design, and that's not our collectors. That's just our local residential streets. You're looking at about $80 to $90 million to complete all 53 miles of those. That's about $1.3 to $1.5 million per mile. I know that question's come up quite a bit of what's going to cost to go about and rebuild several of these roads that need to be rebuilt. So several of you asked us to research what are other Arizona communities doing. We conducted a survey in which 33 Arizona communities responded. 9 of those communities have little to no regulation of their solid waste trucks, very similar to what Cottonwood does today. 24 of those communities either conduct that service in-house or as a single hauler. 9 of those use a single hauler. 15 of those communities conduct the solid waste services in-house. I do want to clarify a couple things. It seems like there's been a lot of confusion. First, anything that the council does choose to do is only going to apply to Cottonwood residents. I think there's a lot of people who live in the Verde Villages or Bridgeport, because their address says Cottonwood, they think they live in the city of Cottonwood. This is only going to apply to people within that red line that I apologize is not showing up. But basically, it's only going to apply to people who live within Cottonwood city limits. Also, a lot of people will say, why aren't we regulating the shipping trucks or the construction trucks? The reason for that is this is the only industry that the state constitution allows you, the city council, to regulate. We actually cannot regulate shipping trucks. We cannot regulate construction vehicles. You can regulate solid waste. That's your prerogative if you'd like to do that based on the state constitution. Also, again, a lot of people are asking, there's a lot more shipping going on our local residential streets, especially as people increase how much they're shopping online. You'll see a lot more FedEx and UPS trucks and those type of trucks going down our local residential streets, and that's definitely true. However, your 2-axle shipping truck is somewhere around 32,000 pounds. Your 3-axle solid waste truck, now I want to emphasize, fully loaded, a 3-axle solid waste truck is about 64,000 pounds. One other clarification, a lot of people say, hey, I live in an HOA or something that has private roads. Anything that the council does would not be applicable to private roads. We cannot regulate what's going on private roads. You can only regulate what's going on city-owned streets. Other people have asked, what about city buses? Aren't they breaking up our streets? In all but one case, our city buses only run on our collector streets, which are built to handle them. We do have one stretch of a city street that our buses have to go down a collector or go down a local street. Oh, that goes for our school buses too. We also work with our local school districts to try to keep them on our collector streets as well in order to protect our local residential streets. We did meet with the haulers. We actually had 3 separate meetings with the haulers. They've expressed several concerns, one of which was if we go with the single hauler system, that would limit consumer choice, which might ultimately lead to poor customer service. They also expressed the same concern that not all heavy impact on the streets are the solid waste trucks. There's other equipment out there and other vehicles on our city streets as well. We did discuss options with the haulers. We went through several options. We felt like none of those options met those 3 criteria or 3 priorities that the council gave us, as well as the single hauler option. I will go through some of those other options we considered though. So when we were trying to decide how do we limit impact on our residential streets, how do we limit materials going to the landfills, we said one option is we could ask haulers to only use 1 truck per week. Now, the haulers could choose how they do that. Some put 2 containers on the same truck. They said they have the capability of doing that, and that is an option. However, if we did that, that only reduced the trips on our residential streets by 40%. So I know it seemed like the council was looking for a higher percentage than a 40% reduction. Another option we kicked around a little bit was requiring containers only on one side of the road. And if that was combined with the option number one and on top, that would be a 50 to 70% reduction of our solid waste truck trips. However, there's a lot of negative that goes with that. Basically, you'd have to take your container across the road, or your neighbor takes their container in front of your house, and we felt that would be a very controversial. But we did discuss a lot of different options. We talked about requiring haulers, if you're going to provide solid waste services in the city of Cottonwood, that you provide recycling in your base fee. Basically, when someone calls in to ask for your services, as part of that base fee, you will provide recycling. The problem with that option is it did nothing for our streets, so that didn't improve or protect our streets at all. We considered a fee to fund household hazardous waste events and other sustainability events. Unfortunately, a fee just doesn't amount to much. Even $1 a month, which is pretty substantial when people are already paying $12 a month or around $12 a month for trash, $1 a month is pretty substantial. It really only generates about $54,000 a year. It's really not a substantial amount, which is why we didn't present that option or didn't recommend that option. Another option we discussed was maybe future subdivisions limit themselves to a single hauler. Maybe we're not protecting our current streets, but at least our future streets would be protected. Then we looked at the possibility of zones. Unfortunately, we can't break up the zones and hand them to different haulers. So we could break up the city into zones, but all zones could go to a single hauler, and citizens still wouldn't have their choice. They would get whoever got their zone. But those are the options that we kicked around. So the best option, based on the three priorities that the council gave us, appears to be the single hauler option. If that's the direction council wanted us to proceed, we could put together a request for proposals or an RFP for a single hauler. That would maximize the reduction of stress on our city streets by at least 80%. It would reduce the solid waste truck trips on our city streets by 80% per week. We would likely see a reduction in price. Clarkdale saw a 25% reduction. Now, Clarkdale added on a surcharge in which the price went up to the citizens. That would be up to the council if that's something you wanted to do. But they saw about a 25% initial reduction in price. Also, you could insert escalators. Basically, that price could not increase above a certain amount. We could, as part of that, minimize material sent to our landfills. And we could also add in accountability to make sure that they provide good customer service, either fees or fines, if they provide poor customer service. The council should know that if that's the direction you'd want to go, simultaneously, we probably should adopt an ordinance or develop an ordinance. That ordinance is what would restrict other haulers from operating in the city. I just want the council to know that if you go that direction, we'd probably have to do both of those in parallel paths. Now, there are problems or cons with the single hauler option. One is it would limit consumer choice. There would be less options and less competition. There would be no additional revenue to fix streets. Some people have said, our streets have problems already. This doesn't necessarily fix them. It maybe protects them for a little bit longer, but it doesn't fix them. And it will impact businesses if this is the option you choose to go with. Some pros for the single hauler, we could see lower costs. Now again, council can decide whether you want to add a surcharge to that or not. But again, Clarkdale saw about a 25% reduction, and they added that surcharge in. We would see about an 80% reduction in trips on our local streets. All residents would have increased access to recycling, and we could ask that single hauler to do annual household hazardous waste events, free cleanup events, especially curbside events. What's next? We are asking the council to provide us direction in which direction you'd like us to proceed. Those directions appear to be either proceed with the RFP for a single hauler, and if that's the direction, develop an ordinance alongside that, or would you prefer us to continue with the status quo as Cottonwood has done in the past? And with that, I'll open up to any questions.
Great, thank you. Does council have any questions for Morgan Scott?
I'd like to hear about the RFP process, should we choose to go down that road.
Sorry about that. So the RFP process, basically we would put together criteria or weights for people to bring in proposals. I imagine, based on what council's directions in the past, and obviously we can change that the three criteria or the three priorities would be similar to the priorities you gave us last time of whoever provides the minimum impact to city streets, whoever minimizes material sent to landfills, and whoever provides the best sustainability efforts. I imagine those would be the three criteria that we would weight that on. Oh, as well as probably price, of course.
Mr. Mayor, we would also add, that as he spoke about customer service requirements, we would put the price indicators in there. They would have to submit their pricing. And there could be other things if council so directs, but we would create the RFP before we went out. And that no decision would be made by council till the very end. So even at the end of the process, you guys decided you wanted status quo, we would be able to stay with status quo. So even if we move forward with the RFP process, it is not absolute until you accept the bid that comes in.
So then all the local haulers would have an opportunity
Absolutely,
to put in a proposal.
absolutely.
And we could reject all of them and just stay with what we're doing.
We could reject all of them at that time if they didn't meet your requirements or your expectations.
Okay. One item I forgot, I apologize, we have received a lot of input from either phone calls, letters, or emails. I think as of this afternoon, 35 different citizens have contacted us. 6 of them for the single hauler option, 29 of them had issues with the single hauler option.
Okay.
Another question that came up was how many bids did Clarkdale get? They got 3 complete bids when they did this and 1 incomplete bid.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
When Clarkdale conducted a process a few years ago, they got 3 complete bids and 1 incomplete bid.
Okay. There was one other hauler, I think, in the area at that time, wasn't there?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other questions from council to staff?
Not at this time.
Okay. Would you like to go ahead and hear from the folks here tonight? Yes. Okay, so just a quick refresher. All the folks that are here to speak to the council, again, there are blue forms. If you came in late, you're welcome to fill out a blue form. Hopefully there's still some left up there. We have quite a stack in front of us. We're going to limit you to 3 minutes. There's going to be a really annoying little buzzer that goes off, administered by our clerk, deputy clerk. When that goes off, we're going to cut you off. We're going to try really hard to keep everybody to 3 minutes, out of respect for the fact that there are a lot of folks here tonight, and we all want to get home at a decent hour, but we do want to hear from everybody. So out of respect for your neighbors and fellow community members, please do try to keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. We're probably going to hear a lot of the same themes over and over again, so if you just want to show up and say, I support or I'm against this proposal, that would be fine too. If public speaking is not your thing, but you want to make your voice heard, then that's what I'd recommend. Just say I'm for or against. Again, appreciate the significant turnout. I've received a ton of emails on this issue. Many of you I've replied to, many of you I just haven't been able to yet, but really a tremendous amount of input from our community, and that's what helps us make better decisions. So thanks, everyone. Again, bathrooms right out here. It's going to be a long evening. We have many forms to go through. Please address the council directly, and remember not to shout out questions from the audience. Remember not to turn around and speak to folks. Please speak into the microphone, and we'll get through this, okay? So I'm going to call up Mr. Hopkins, and behind Mr. Hopkins will be Nancy Hottinger. And if I butcher names, which I'm bound to tonight, I apologize in advance. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Bill Hopkins. I don't know how many in this room has been a member of this fair city as long as I have. I've been here approximately 6 years before the town was incorporated, let alone before it had all these modern conveniences. When I first came here, there was approximately 1,500 souls in the city or the town or the community of Cottonwood, Arizona. In the first 20 years of my residence here, I worked on every conceivable body organization in order to help as well as I could this community to be a nice community to live in, so when you have your family grow up here. I don't regret that. Excuse me if I sound a little emotional. It's not anything that you're saying or that I'm saying. It's a personal physical or effect that I have. I've heard as much as I could of the description of what's going on, and I didn't hear it too well because I was quite a ways back there. But I failed to hear anything that make logic going to a single collector system. There may have been said something that I would have thought was a compulsion to do that. However, I've never heard it. I've studied about this issue some time. And to long story short, which I did not come here to tell you my life story, I promise you that. When people ask me how long I've been here, sometimes I kiddingly say, when I came here, this town was so small, they just called it Cotton. Well, that's a joke, folks. My reason for being here is simply to say that this country, in my opinion, was built on a free enterprise system, and it's about all we have left. I won't waste your time very much longer, but I adamantly reject a single collector system. I adamantly reject that.
Thank you, sir.
In the first place,
Your 3 minutes is up, Mr. Hopkins. I'm sorry to cut you short, but
is my time up?
yep, the buzzer went, my friend. I'm sorry. Thank you for being here this evening, though.
I'm against it.
Thank you. So Nancy Hottinger is next, and after Nancy, we'll have Sean Lewis. I feel like I may have gotten your name wrong.
My name is Nancy Hottinger, 15-year resident. I was not going to speak tonight like most of the others. This is not a very comfortable thing to do. However, there's so many people who feel the way I do, and they don't want to speak. But according to the rules, you have to come up here if you want to voice the opposition. My first question is, why was the other side of this issue not presented? You had lots of facts and things. Where's the other side? Mr. Mayor.
So if you have specific questions, and
Yes.
this goes for the whole audience, we'll take a note of your questions and we'll answer them. But you only have 3 minutes, so
Okay.
if you could.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as inartfully as this might be, I am trying to present some of the other side. My issue is very basic. It's called freedom of choice. It's called free market competition. And Mr. Mayor, you told me before the meeting that legally, which I did not know, that you seven, I believe it's seven, have the right to do this, whether we want it or not. And I understand that. But we also, and you're not asking us for a vote. So whether you want to or whether we like it or not, you have the authority to do this. However, we also have a vote. And as you know, your positions change over the years. In 15 years, I've seen many different councils. But if you are truly interested in our input, then I suggest that you take maybe a hand vote. And yes, I am for free enterprise. That is more important to me. I don't see roads falling apart, but I would be willing to pay more in taxes to fix the roads than to take away my ability to choose with whom I do business. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Lewis. Then after Sean, we have Judd Wasden. Evening.
Hi, I'm Sean Lewis. I love this community because we're close to a big city, but we're not in a big city. But the one thing I really like about it is that we're free here. And if you take our choices away, then, you know, what's next? Only one kind of vehicle that we can have? One hospital, one doctor? I don't believe in that. I believe that we all have a choice. And if you take that choice away, it only doesn't affect myself, but it affects my wife. It affects when I have children, what kind of choices they have. And we need the freedom to choose the best company to work for. I do business and house cleaning all over the Verde Valley. I do recycling for free for my clients. What I like about that is they work with me and I work with them, so they save the recycling for me when I come every time. And so they don't waste that. But they have different companies that they work for. If there's only one, then they don't get that choice. And, you know, you say that the prices can be, you know, stopped, but who says they will? We have one company in this town that they don't give us a choice. And they've treated my wife horribly because she's a waitress and she paid them with $1 bills and they complained because she was paying with $1 bills. Well, she's a waitress. Does she have to go to the bank to convenience that company? No. It's money. But she still felt like she was down below because that's how they treated her. And that's a shame. And if I was there, I would have stood up for her. And that's what I believe in, that all these people here, we have a choice. But if you take that away from us, then we don't. And what's next? Like I said, the vehicles that we have to drive on the road, the times we drive on the road, whatever it takes, it's a shame. So we need to have choice. It only doesn't help everybody. It helps the people that run those businesses create more jobs. Well, you cut down to one service, then there's less people working. So that's all I have. You know, I'm totally against it.
Right.
We need freedom.
Picked up on that. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be here at the work session. I was intrigued by just being able to come and talk trash and not get in trouble. So, you know, in an era where we hear a lot about buy local, shop local, community involvement in local commerce, and in trying to encourage people to participate with local businesses, this is one of those defining issues, I think, in our community. Taylor Waste is one of those haulers that is headquartered here in Cottonwood. And it's, my experience has been to be able to call and speak with the owner and to get a response back. The involvement in the community, I think you can't put a price on that. From sports, sponsorship, just to being participants in our community is, I think, very valuable. It's not a company that's run from somewhere else. It's owned and managed here. And that's something that I appreciate. I noticed in the presentation that Mr. Scott gave, he said that the reduction would be 80% with a single hauler. It was up to 70% if we simply pulled our trash cans to the other side of the street. So that's a 10% difference, and I think that if you're asking people to step up and make a choice and preserve the choice that they would like to have in their community, I think it's important to make us citizens have to stretch a little bit too. I don't think the walk across the street's so bad. I think there can be something that can be incorporated into that. And I know that this is an issue that is over your jurisdiction, but there are a lot of, on the weight charts that were presented, a fully loaded trash truck has 64,000 pounds, whereas a UPS truck is 32,000 pounds. So there, you throw in FedEx, FedEx Ground, UPS, On Track. There's several of those that are in our residential neighborhoods every day as well. So I think because of that jurisdiction, we're singling out something that we can do. And in my opinion, I don't think we need a change. I appreciate the opportunity to select somebody based on quality service. And sometimes I think we get caught up in trying to be so efficient and to base things on cost controls that we lose sight of really what's important. And a lot of that is community service, community involvement, and the customer service they provide. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Wesley. All right, we have Mr. Bob Backus up next, and behind him would be James Combs, excuse me.
I'm not a Cottonwood resident, so I don't know if I can speak to this or not, but I do live in Clarkdale. And when Clarkdale went to the one user service, I used a different service and just called it commercial. I want that choice. I want the choice. I want to be able to make my choices to who I use for anything, just like everybody else does. We shouldn't be stuck just with one choice in our lives. We have that enough. That happens to us really often, and we need to make sure that we don't take away our rights to make certain choices in our lives. And I'm against anything that says that we're going to have a single service that you have to pick from. I didn't like Obamacare, and I don't like a lot of that of this stuff. So I'm against anything that controls what we can choose in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. James Combs, and behind James will be Susan Ritwan. Is that right? Okay. I'll take your word for it. I'm sorry. Thank you. Sir, welcome.
Good evening. My name is James Combs. I wanted to take exception to one of the focal points that came up there about the 80% reduction in trips. If it went to a single hauler, that hauler would have to also pick up the other company's trips in order to get the job done on a daily basis. So I don't, the math just doesn't compute. But I'm opposed to going to a single hauler just due to the fact it exempts free enterprise, and it seems like much of our country's history has been a history of replacing what worked with what sounded good. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Bittman, was it? Pitwin, sorry. I knew there was going to be one that I butchered. Sorry, it was yours.
That's all right. It used to be harder when my husband came from the Ukraine.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my story
Okay.
too. Behind you will be Ronnie McMullen. Good evening.
It's my turn.
It is, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I am really amazed that you are here tonight, even thinking about this type of work and experimentation and investigation and research when there are a lot more things going on outside our windows in this town. But I'm not going to get into Monsanto and Roundup being sprayed around the Christian care where the old people are just sitting in there breathing it. So I'm going to get to this point here. Many years ago, I and my neighbors in Lodi, New Jersey, spent months at every town meeting to save our homes from eminent domain. We won. My husband and I moved to Cottonwood about 5 years back. We'd spent our whole lives in New York and New Jersey, and we came here to find peace and quiet and a more comfortable climate. Unfortunately, it looks like climate change followed us here. I have seen various instances throughout my life where the people in power, like the town councils, have tried to regulate the businesses and people. I came from a state where people know how to fight for their rights, and it looks like there may be some here. I really feel that, as the first man said, one of the only things we have left now in our rights seems to be, how we can be consumers, what we can decide to buy or not buy, who we can hire to do things for us, for our businesses. I really think that having 2 or even 3 haulers in a city and a borough, I think having that and that matter of choice is much more important than this meeting. I also feel that there's an expression, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. I think they're doing fine. I live on South 12th Street. I'd be interested in why we've had that street paved over and over again. I cannot be near, I have chemical sensitivities, and I have everything on my property is organic. I have organic gardens, I have organic fruit trees, and the Sonoran Desert Commission let me adopt my, I think he's about 10 or 12 years old. He's called Samson O'Reilly. He's a tortoise. They would not have let me have him if it hadn't been so, okay? So that's how I feel, is I want to live someplace that's clean and that's not going to kill me.
Thank you, Ms. Pitwan.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have, so Ronnie McMullen, and then behind Ronnie we have Mr. Mr. Kinsella. Great, very good. Evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. First of all, I don't personally like turning on the TV and watching the charades of the politics that are going on in our country right now. We have a shot here to do something different than what we see on TV. I don't like being told telling me that I'm going to be dinged on my taxes if I don't have health care, because what happens if you take care of yourself? You get a plus for that. So here we are with trash haulers, and I think Morgan did a wonderful job with his numbers, but the numbers don't always calculate as we see them in real life, in real time. I had a trucking company in California, concrete mixers. They weigh a lot, and there was never any speaking, and obviously because you can't regulate the dump and the construction, but we never tore up streets. And so I really don't see, as the gentleman a couple before said, the numbers don't add up. I don't see the numbers adding up. I think it's about, we need to have the freedom to choose and not be told what we're to be. Can you imagine if I was the president and said, okay, if you're in government, you're all going to wear white shirts? You'd say, well, okay, if I have to do that, but you really don't want to do that. You want to pick your shirt, correct? So I think it's important that we remember the small guys and we build around that, not what the politics are doing on TV. So anyway.
Thank you, Mr. McMullen. Mr. Kinsella, and then is there a mic that we could bring to Mr. Kinsella? You all right? Okay. And then behind Mr. Kinsella would be John Ortiz.
First of all, I want to thank the council for giving me an opportunity to voice my opinion. I am very much against a single enterprise of anything which takes away our chance to do the choosing of the ones that we want to take care of us. Number one, there was some concern about the streets getting tore up by the garbage trucks. I don't see no difference if you have one hauler go through all the streets or 3 haulers at different places. And only that, they only pick it up just only once a week. I bought the place that I live now in 1974. And it's always been the Cottonwood Council is and are an advocate of free enterprise. I am very much against to be told that I can only do one thing or order one thing or buy a certain car or any other thing. I want to be able to have a choice. Now, we want to keep, I do, want to keep our hometown of garbage haulers. For one thing, they spend their earnings in the town. They pay the taxes, they help pay for the road rebuilds right through taxes. And I am, again, very much for open enterprises of the car haul, of the garbage haulers that we have today. So that's about what I have. Oh, by the way, my name is Yvonne Kinsella, but I'd rather be called Curly because I get telephone calls, Miss Yvonne, Mrs. Yvonne, is that the lady of the house? So I'd rather be called Curly. I thank you very much.
Curly. Okay, so John Ortiz, you're up next. Behind John, we have Jonathan Waregi. Good evening.
Good evening. I've been in Cottonwood, a resident of Arizona, almost all my life. And my father was born on the hill up on Jerome in 17. And they always get me mixed up with John Ortiz, the painter. But I've worked for Phoenix Cement for 30 years and retired there. And I'm John Ortiz, Phoenix Cement. And the reason I'm up here is that I'm strictly against having one hauler in the city of Cottonwood because I appreciate free enterprise. And I want to have a choice, and I want to have the freedom of choice. And I think when we had the big crisis on the fuel deal and we were with a different hauler, I called that hauler up and asked them how come they raised their rates. And they said because of the fuel cost. And then they reneged and they said, well, we can lower it by $2 a month or whatever it was. And I said, that's not enough. So I went with a local garbage hauler, and my Taylor Waste people have been the best in the last 15, 12 years since they've been a hauler for the city of Cottonwood. So I'm strictly against one hauler. I want to have a choice.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Thank you. Jonathan Walregi, and then behind you, sir, will be Stephen Adelsman.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Horegi, and I am opposed to a single hauler. I believe that having competition in the area is a way for the price to be stable. It is a citizen's choice to choose who they want based on services provided and customer service. And I do not agree with the figures that were presented tonight. And I wanted to make my voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Adelsman, behind you, sir, will be Charlene Zach. Evening.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Adelsman. I've lived in Cottonwood since 2003. Was a homeowner for most of those years, currently renting. And I want to start by thanking you for your service. I think it's maybe easy to take for granted what you're doing. And sitting here tonight has been an eye-opening experience for me. I lean toward favoring what most people are referring to as free enterprise. I'm very supportive of local business. So if there ever was a change, I would hope there would be a way to weight a decision in favor of local business, specifically Taylor. I think they do an excellent job, and I support them. I think there are sound reasons, and I don't think your logic has come through completely tonight, but having wrestled with these issues previously in a situation where I was, I understand the economic dilemma. So you have my sympathies. Free enterprise is a hallmark of American culture, and sometimes I don't know that we fully grasp how complicated being individuals, being free, and also being a society is. I get an interesting point of view on that because I spend quite a bit of time in Japan, which is a very different culture, and necessarily so because the Japanese live in a very small piece of land, and if they hadn't figured out how to live together efficiently, they would have gone away a long time ago. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that. I don't think we fully appreciate what a miracle Japan is in some ways, but it's very different from us. And so I have sympathy on both sides, but I would, at this point, strongly prefer to stay with the system we've got and recommend highly the idea of having trash cans on one side of the street and changing it every other year. We have even-numbered years, we have odd-numbered years. Most or all streets have an even-numbered side and an odd-numbered side. It'd be very simple. Just say on even-numbered year, you put the trash can on the even-numbered side, on the odd, so on. And if that could save as much as whatever it was, 40 or whatever percent, that's a significant savings right there. So I would recommend that. That's very simple. I was living someplace where that was done, and I thought it worked very well. So I would commend that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adelsman. So folks, we're about a third of the way through. We still have many forms. If there's anybody out there that still wants to speak, you know, the forms are over there on the table, and I just want to say thank you to all of you for your tone and civility, and I really do appreciate it. Charlene Zach, and then after you, ma'am, we have Steve Anderson. Good evening.
Thanks, Jim. I'm angry, and it's going to be strong. The underhanded corruption that occurred when this city took over our water system should never be forgotten. This solid waste proposal is a de minimis concern at this time. This is the third time our citizens have come forward to say no to you. What part of no do you still don't understand? Your primary concern should be our water, not our trash. On any day, my water can be yellow or brown, and the pressure changes have blown the water right out of my toilets and damaged my floors. You stopped replacing my rotten pipes at my restaurant. The pipes are so rotten that they implode just by the touch of your finger when they dig the dirt off them. The water pipes are inches under the road. We have much bigger problems. How are you going to choose who will be the hauler? I suspect by a bid proposal. I am tired of how some residents do not have to comply to codes and others do. Our roads will sustain the current use until the water is right. You are out of your minds to think we will support a monopoly, and you have proven by incompetent water management that the city cannot manage another company. This proposal is ludicrous, and the city definitely should have zero financial interest in this. How could a blind bid ever be fair to a smaller company trying to bid? And I'm suspicious of leaks in this bidding system if it happens. Not me, but we are against this. And do remember 911, this country is about free enterprise and freedom. And shame on you if you support this. The power of the people at Woodstock was powerful, wasn't it? Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Anderson, and then after you will be Chris Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Steve Anderson. I've lived here for 47 years. My wife has lived here for 72 years. We know a little bit about the town. I was on the very first Cottonwood Business Association, where the town, at that time wanted to charge a 0.5% sales tax. We encouraged the town not to do it because we knew that it would continue to increase, which it has, of course, and for good reasons and purposes. I'm not condemning that. I appreciate Mr. Scott's comments and and this is not to denigrate him in any way, but I remember taking a class as a freshman in college. It was called How to Lie with Statistics. And not that he's presenting any lies, but the manner in which they're presented can be misconstrued. For instance, I just had a lady back there telling me that the school bus miles, 70% of their time is on the roads. So I would like to present my presentation, a little bit of a global difference. I lived in Uruguay for a number of years, in Mexico for a number of years. I have seen what's happened under a socialistic system of control. And we've watched garbages dumped in streets, uncontrolled employment costs in both of those countries. All you have to do is cross the border to Mexico and you'll see how well the garbage service works. I would suggest that the council take no action, that we continue the status quo with what's happening in our community. And there are many things that we could pick on, the sewer system, the water system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to let you know that I was the director and founder of American Heritage Academy Charter School. When charter schools started in the Valley, one of the superintendents started plastering half-truths, statistical half-truths about charter schools and their inability to have accountability. I called that superintendent up. He was a good friend of mine, and I said, Mr. Superintendent, you know some of those aren't true. And he said, yes, but now we have competition. And because we have competition, we have to sharpen our pencils. And the fact that he said, I could burn $100 bills in the corner without any accountability, I said, that's not true. I have the same accountability that you do as a general public school system. I can just do it less, and I can do it better. And we have for the 24 years the American Heritage Academy has existed here. I support the council in their proper and right decisions and trying to protect the rights of the individuals, not to mandate. And that at our charter school, American Heritage, we had over 500 kids there between kindergarten and 5th grade, and we taught them the free enterprise system. We taught them about capitalism. We taught them what happens when you start going down a slippery slope, or as what the classical professor Bastiat would have said, the seen and the unseen. And what I see is the town sliding down into that slippery slope of, well, this looks convenient, and it's not. So I support you in your right decision of inaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Chris Taylor, and behind you is Tandy Taylor. Evening.
Mayor Linsky and City Council, my name is Chris Taylor, and I'm the owner of Taylor Waste located here in Cottonwood. And as you may or may not be aware, Taylor Waste has been voted the #1 waste hauler for the past 16 consecutive years here in the Verde Valley. We're one of 3 businesses that have been voted number 1 16 out of the 16 years that the Verde Independent has held this special recognition. We're a locally family-owned and operated business. We have been blessed to be a part of this growing community where people take care of people locally since we began our business in 2002. We built our garbage company from nothing. We didn't buy another company, nor did we partner with any garbage business. Our business was built by my family's blood, sweat, and tears. We have had what some refer to as the American dream, a family-owned and operated business that's been built successfully. We're fulfilled honor to live here where free enterprise has always been available. Our community is made up of small businesses who support and lean on each other. Our situation here is different than when the city of Cottonwood purchased the water companies. The Garrison and Seiler families and Cordis Lake Water Company were purchased by the city of Cottonwood. They were sold for a fair price. The city of Cottonwood has approached this differently in that whoever gets the bid receives all the customers of Cottonwood. There is no purchase. Mayor Alinsky, you have a family-owned business. I would like to pose a question to you. How would you feel if the city decided to take over your business you worked so hard to build? How would you feel if you were forced to walk away from the business that you and your family had spent years building? This is a dilemma that I and other haulers in this area are up against. The concept of going to one hauler was previously addressed 2010 and 2013, and our citizens overwhelmingly oppose the idea. By going to one hauler, prices are not forced to stay the reasonable, nor is quality of service ever guaranteed. A single hauler would have complete control over the entire city, and there would be no need of providing excellent quality service, keeping our citizens of Cottonwood happy. If you go with one hauler, there will be local garbage companies such as ours who will no longer be able to donate their money back into the city and to school events. This concept of giving back keeps our local businesses connected with the city. Also, the businesses who would no longer be able to service the city would be forced to cut back on employees, causing layoffs and unemployment within the city. Although my business has existed for 17 years, my family has been involved in the garbage industry here in Cottonwood for 36 years. We, of course, would submit a bid to the city if you chose to go to one hauler. However, if we don't get the bid, we'll be forced to give our customers to the city for nothing and walk away, not the American dream. Thank you.
Thank you. Tandy Taylor, and then behind you will be Al Pivnik. Evening.
Mayor Alinsky and City Council, I'm Tandy Taylor, co-owner of Taylor Waste at 319 South 6th Street in Cottonwood. We currently have 3 garbage companies servicing our residents of Cottonwood. One of these companies are local, one is from Prescott Valley, and the other is a worldwide corporation. I thought it would be advantageous for our public to know that the City of Clarkdale bids their garbage out to one hauler. Their situation was different as there were no existing garbage haulers servicing the residents of Clarkdale. The garbage was provided by the city itself. When the city decided they wanted to be done with picking up the garbage, they bid the garbage out to the haulers, and the residents paid the City of Clarkdale on a bill now that includes their garbage, water, and their sewer. No existing businesses were pushed out the door, and no existing businesses had to relinquish their customers to the city. Here's an interesting point for the public. Before 2013, the hauler who received the bid for the City of Clarkdale garbage charged the city $10.50 per resident, and the city turned around and charged the residents $18.25. In 2013, the city went out for bid again, and the hauler who received the bid charged the city $9 a resident, $1.50 less than the previous bid 6 years prior. But the city is still charging the residents $18.25. We were asked to come up with 3 solutions, which were leave it as it is, divide the city into zones, or the city buys out all the haulers and then sends it out for bid. All of these suggestions were denied when we met with Morgan Scott, and we were told the city wants one hauler. Well, of course they do. Look at what the City of Clarkdale makes off the residents. Since our family began our business in '02, we have felt a strong need to give back to the community. It has never been in our nature to be recognized or want praise for the help we have given to the community, to families, and to the schools. That being said, it's difficult for me to share this, but I feel like I should. Our company supports many city youth and school organizations. We have donated to Little League, High Desert Youth Football, Mean Machine Flag Football, Cottonwood Clippers Swim Team, MUHS Sports, Football, Softball, Baseball, Basketball, Swimming, MUHS Drive for .5, Operation Grad, CMS Football, Basketball, and Baseball. We've donated to our local Boy Scouts and to the FFA at the Verde Valley Fair as a local annual bidder at the fair auction and dessert auction. We donate to our police force for their annual night out and contributed to the Law Enforcement Hero statue, which stands in front of the police department. And we donate to Relay for Life. As for our local city events, Taylor Waste donated our garbage service to Thunder Valley Rally, Rhythm and Ribs, Fall Festival, Walk on Main, Brian Mickelson Run, and Independence Day celebration. We have also donated our time and provided garbage service for the city cleanups to help our community look better. When the Verde Independent interviewed my husband when we received the Reader's Choice this year, my husband said, quote, "The biggest compliment I have received, as a business owner, is when we were presented the Business of the Year award from the Cottonwood Chamber of Commerce in 2016. This award was presented to businesses that were strongly connected to the community. This has been a priority for us as business owners since we began our business in 2002. We love this community. We have become very connected with our towns in the Verde Valley and our schools. We try to give back to the community because they have invested in us, and it's a good feeling, exclamation mark, close quote. Please be aware, if you choose to go with one hauler and we do not receive the bid, these acts of giving back will no longer be able to exist for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Al Pivnik, you're up next, and after you will be John Huffaker.
Council, appreciate you inviting us for this auspicious debut of conversation. But with all the conversation we've had and all the rhetoric going back and forth, there's one word that this whole group, whoever's spoken, has used. And the word is a 6-letter word. It's choice. We have a choice. And if the choice is wiped out, we become a single capability of doing anything right. Now, we had a big crowd here tonight. I've never been to a council where we've had this many people. But in all honesty, I'm a little embarrassed for the council, because how they can bring up this subject again and again and again, and you see, I haven't heard one person that came up to speak at this mic to be against, to be for the situation. And the against is the answer, but you have to make that decision. But don't make it the wrong way. Thank you.
Thank you. John Huffaker, you're up next, and then there will be Carolyn Kohagura. Hope I said that right. Good evening.
I'm John Huffaker. I have lived in the Verde Valley all my life. The things that you brought up as positives, I see primarily as negatives. Recycling being the big one. Every city I am familiar with that is trying to recycle is paying big bucks trying to get rid of stuff like glass, paper, and plastic, because there isn't the demand on the recycle end for the product. So if you want recycling to be a primary thing, you're going to have to figure out how to get the recycled stuff used again, because it's not being used. The City of Flagstaff can't get rid of their paper. They can't get rid of their glass. They can't get rid of anything but metal. Another negative I see if we go to a single is you become subject to easily being blackmailed by unions for more money and more money and more money. And I just am totally opposed to a single hauler system. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Carolyn Kohagura, and then after you will be Edna Ahrens. Did I get your name right? Yes. All right. Well, I know you, Edna.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
There's not much that hasn't been said, that hasn't already been said. I'm for free enterprise. This issue has been brought up. The people have voted on it. We've said no. I think it's a waste of time and money to be doing this over and over again. There are so many other issues. Homelessness, things are being taken away from the homeless. I think your time, money can be spent better than bringing up this issue. I think our free enterprise is wonderful. We have the freedom of choice. I think our local people have done such a wonderful job taking care of the waste, donating to the community. I hope you really just drop this and go on to things that really will help humanity here in Cottonwood. We have so many problems with homelessness, with drug issues. I'm really ashamed that we have to keep talking about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Edna Ahrens, and then Dale Allred after you.
Mayor and council, my name's Edna Ahrens. I live in the city of Cottonwood. I live in a community that's full of seniors. We did not get a choice on who could be our garbage hauler. I pay more than what other people are paying per month for it. I recycle everything that I can possibly recycle. Since we no longer have those other recycling bins, I started going to the city yard where they said they had recycling. But they mix it up. They don't have it separated. They put paper with plastic, glass with cans. And so I just think it's wrong. I have no choice. I tried to talk them into going to another carrier that does recycling. So my freedom was taken away. So I have to haul my stuff out every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks. And I cannot fill my big garbage can. It takes me 3 to 4 weeks to fill it up, to put it out for my garbage service. And I just think it's wrong that we should be forced into something that is not to our benefit. I like the recycling. I go to all these city events, and I have seen Taylor Waste there collecting our garbage and doing it for free. If you go to one system, you're going to lose that, and that's going to cost the city a lot of money to pay for a garbage truck to be there and take care of all of the garbage that TVR, things we have had in Old Town, 4th of July, it's always, ever since I've been here, and I've lived in Cottonwood since '05. And I like Cottonwood, but I think it's wrong to go to one carrier, and especially one that doesn't even do recycling. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale Allred, behind you will be Helene Karat. Good evening.
Scott Taylor family, Chris Taylor family, Glenn Taylor family. As has been said, this family has served this valley for 36 years faithfully. Is this how we say thanks? Why would we even consider one grocery store, one doctor, one barber, one restaurant? It's not the American way. One church. Think about that. Where are the 300 people that are for this tonight? here's your answer, right behind you. Just because the law says that this one type of business can be regulated and restricted to one doesn't mean it's a good idea. I like my choice of local service and local businesses. I've been here 51 years in business most of the time. It is the best place in the world to live and to do business. To try to answer in my mind why we would even consider one hauler, one choice. The only thing I could think of is follow the money. Why? Who's going to benefit from this one hauler idea? I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Helene Carrot, and after you will be Mr. or Mrs. O'Donnell, I believe. O'Donnell. Okay. Evening.
Hey, 2 weeks in a row, it's got to be a record, right? So part of your argument is that trash trucks are tearing up the chip-sealed roads. My daily driver weighs 13,000 pounds. It'll tear it up too. So will any four-wheel drive truck, and so will any four-wheel drive Jeep Wrangler with mudding tires. The Wranglers weigh less than a Prius. They still tear it up. It's a traction issue. If you're looking to save money, then we need to look at different options for paving the roads and not chip seal, because it's costing more than it's worth. I think Taylor already went over the local sponsorship stuff. I went through the RPF process, what was that, 3 years ago for the automotive bid? There's 40 some odd shops here. You got 3 applications for a bid out of 40. You're starting with 3. How's that gonna go after the first round? So, okay, that's all I got.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell, then after you, sir, will be Don Windmiller.
Well, first, you put up quite a few facts and figures there. It's been my experience over the years that facts and figures can be manipulated and slanted any way you want to slant them. But it seems to me that no matter if you have 1 company or 5 companies, you still have the same amount of garbage, same amount of trucks hauling the garbage away. So whether you have 1 company or 5 companies. Next, I want to say I really appreciate this council. I think you're good people. I think your heart's in the right place, that you're trying to do things that are good for the community. But I'm here to tell you, this is not the right thing for the community. And I hope you search your hearts and come up with the right answer. And I hope you do put it to a vote, a hand vote, and you'll see that overwhelmingly the people are opposed to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Windmiller, and then after you, sir, will be Barbara Combs.
Mayor and council and citizens, because we're all citizens, there's a critical word that needs to be incorporated here, and that's community. Community is where we live. Community is what we are. And we are all members of the community. There have been a number of facts provided by Morgan Scott. A number of us don't agree with those completely. We feel that there probably are a number of different ways that some of the information could have been presented that would have been more accurate. One of the things that I am concerned with is that large national corporations, if they are denied the ability to serve in an area where they're already serving, have a reputation for tying up cities in litigation that costs far more than the consequences of allowing the existing 3 haulers to continue. I think that's a factor that needs to be considered. There are a number of other factors. Most of my fellow citizens in the back here have covered almost every point that I made. I sent my 1 page to you, and I would like you to consider it when you make your decision. One of the things that I hear here is, as these people present to you and I present to you, is that this is citizen input. You are elected to make decisions for us, but you are elected to make decisions on our behalf and in accordance with the wishes of the citizenry, because if we're not doing that, then we are not a community and we are not a city. So I would like you to consider that very carefully when you make the decision. Personally, I feel that it's very, very important that we have the ability to choose in many of these areas. As others have said, you have the ability, according to state regulations, to regulate this one industry. But we're going to see a continued increase, a continued proliferation of other large trucks on our street. One of the primary points that I would like you to consider very carefully is you cannot eliminate wear. The possibility exists that you might limit wear some, but that possibility that you're going to limit wear some is faced by almost every city. Most of them accept the primary responsibility, as Morgan Scott said, of maintaining their infrastructure in good repair for the benefit of the city and its citizenry. And I would rather see funds more properly allocated to more effectively maintain the streets rather than trying to mitigate wear. I thank you for your time. I would much prefer to have local Taylor Waste continue in their responsible manner. Thank you.
Barbara Combs, and after you will be Jim Ledbetter.
I agree with everything you said. My name is Barbara Combs, and if one company has the whole contract to do everything, and you explained about, they said that they could put 2 things on the truck to carry. If they do that, the weight is going to be doubled and your streets are torn up. It doesn't make sense. The numbers don't add up. And I kept hearing the word regulate, regulate. We can regulate this, we can regulate that. How many people are you going to regulate out of a job? Yeah. And lastly, this is America. We should have freedom of choice. And more every day, that's being taken away from us. My children, who are now in their 40s and 50s, I'm having to explain history when they say, oh, this is great. You don't know how great it really used to be. We need to stop rewriting history and support freedom of choice. I'm opposed to one service.
Thank you. Mr. Ledbetter, and then after you will be Mac Hoagland, I believe. Evening.
Thank you. Mayor, Council. First, I want to make a quick comment. Known Morgan Scott almost his whole life. He's an honorable guy. I just disagree with him wholeheartedly tonight. And I would ask you to indulge me for just a moment, Mr. Mayor. I would ask everybody to stand up who thinks this is a bad idea.
So, Mr. Ledbetter, if you could please focus your comments and questions to council, I would appreciate that very much.
But I think that's important for you to say, and it often happens in many city leadership, where people in the community get to be seen and heard at the same time. When I sat in your chair in other roles, I always asked everybody in the room who stood for a single proposition to stand up and tell us. So everybody got to see clearly where everybody stands. And let me tell you a little story. It is about jobs, but it's also about people in the community. And I've heard that over and over tonight. And I'll tell you that a mistake I made a few years ago was there was a big gap relative to funding the Mingus Field and track. The school didn't have enough money to complete it. And I told the then superintendent to go out and hit up the Taylors, and I'd match whatever they did. What a mistake. They paid more than 100 times of what I was willing to pay, and I had to match it. They are good people. They're a good part of this community. You heard from the fair what they do every year. Losing that and losing jobs, oh, what a city should be doing is encouraging exactly those type of businesses. And this is the perfect business. They listed all the things they've done. I had no idea. And I certainly try to do as much as they do, and I don't even measure up. They are a good business. They're a good part of this community. We should be honored to have them here. We shouldn't do anything as a city, as a community, to jeopardize great relationships. And as one of the best ones are before us tonight. And it's an opportunity for you folks to think about this and hopefully go with a plan that is not a single hauler plan. Because at the end of the day, Morgan raised an excellent point. He pointed out that you can't control private roads. I lived on a private road most of the years I lived in this community. I can choose whomever I want, so that truck and hauler can still come over your city roads to get to all the private roads. That'll be the village of Oak Creek. You can't control the transit in and out of your city, so it's not going to make that big of a difference. So the numbers that you're hearing won't actually pan out because you can't control the private roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Hoagland, and then after you will be Weston Barrett.
Thank you.
Evening.
Mark, not Mac, yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
I'm sorry.
I
think I said it right the first time.
Mr. Mayor, again, Mark Hoagland, and I'm a local business guy that was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to move back to this fine city. I was here from about 2006 to 14, and in that time I started, I'm the local coupon book guy here in town, and built a pretty decent business, and part of that was the Taylor Waste support. And I ended up selling it, moving back to Minnesota, and a long story short, the opportunity arose to relaunch my business, and one of the first people I called, probably the third, was Chris, or sent a text. I still had his number, I believe, and I think we forgot to mention a word here tonight as well. We've heard community, choice. We forgot about friend and friendships, and those friendships that I made and still was able to maintain. And I pitched my deal to Chris and 8 months ago, and I think he maybe thought about it for 3 seconds. And I'm just here to tell you, like Mr. Ledbetter just said, that they're an unbelievable family. They're a pillar of this community. I think it's wrong to even think about going to a single hauler. It takes away from the whole American dream like they talked about. If you did decide to go to a single hauler, it would be a complete atrocity if it wasn't Taylor Waste, obviously, from what people have said tonight. And I had no idea all these people they were contributing to, and it's unbelievable. So I can't say enough about Taylor Waste and how they've supported me. I appreciate it, and that's the American dream. And I'm just glad to be back in Cottonwood and be able to work with Taylor Waste again. Thanks.
Good. Thank you. Weston Barrett, after you, sir, will be Nancy Stoddard.
Good evening, Council. I'm Weston Barrett, and I've lived in Cottonwood basically since '65, so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of stuff around here, the community and people and all that stuff. I just wanted to come up tonight to say that I'm well opposed to this. Again, all the things that people have talked about, freedom of choice is really just something that no one really wants to give up. The facts and figures, like what others were saying, I like the idea of putting the trash on one side of the street for 1 year and the other. I think that was a great idea. I mean, because of this meeting, maybe that will be the difference right there, that we can help and still have our freedom of choice. I'm pretty sure the communities that we have, individuals and neighbors wouldn't be opposed to walking across the street, and the next year, you know, the other neighbor walking across the street or something. I think that's a pretty good idea to help. It may not make all the difference that we may want as far as the numbers, but again, I understand if you have 3 trash haulers coming down one neighborhood road and you take that down to 1, that will make a difference to the street. However, it may be worth paying for as individuals, and my beliefs it would be worth paying for. But still, You've got a trash truck that weighs 64,000 pounds, and eventually it gets full, and it goes off the road, and it gets emptied, and then it comes back. And it doesn't weigh 64,000 pounds until it gets full again. So the facts and figures are there, but like the other gentleman said, they can be swayed one way or another. We just really want our freedom and to enjoy living here in Cottonwood. And thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Stoddard? Is Nancy Stoddard still in the room? No? Okay. She was opposed. We have Barbara Wonder, and then after that is Dusty Bowers.
Somebody left this at the right height. I'm Barbara Wonder. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. We have lived in this city for 47 years. We've been business owners, or managers, not owners. Our kids went to school here. My kids are now in their 40s. The buses still stop outside my house to pick up kids twice a day, 5 days a week, basically 9 months of the year. That's a lot of wear and tear in front of my house. Haven't seen much in the line of fixing my street. It is a major thoroughfare from downtown to the bypass. Sorry, I'm old-fashioned. Bypass to me means now Highway 89A. As far as I can see, there is only one major out-of-state, multi-state company that does here. We were customers of theirs for many years. And about every 3 to 6 months, our bills went up. $3, $4, $5 a month. When we finally said enough of this, we were paying $170 for 3 months, once a week service. No recycling. We got to talking, and we talked to some of our friends, found out that local companies were much, much less, were much easier to deal with if you had a problem. I did have a problem. When we finally gave up their services, to this day, they still owe me $3.68, and I can't get it back. Trying to get a hold of someone to address an issue was virtually impossible. If I have a problem with, and I'm not going to pick on either of the two local companies. They're very good. They're both here in town. If I have a problem, I go down and I talk to them, and I'll get this problem solved. Not so with your large companies. Also, when you have one provider, the service gets much less than what you had if you had your own choice. Again, I want my choice. And the only other question is, we have 2 local haulers. We have 1 multi-state. Who do you think is going to have the ability to take on a city all by themselves right now? And who's going to give the lower bid? I want my choice.
Thank you. Dusty Bowers.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to speak. I wrote down some points that I have because I'm a terrible public speaker, so I'm just going to read this for you. But it says, a lot of points have been made tonight that I absolutely agree with and second full-heartedly. But I felt it was important to stand up as an advocate and a representation of a different impact that is taking place here with these proposed changes. I am 41, was born and raised here in Cottonwood. I grew up playing Little League and miscellaneous leagues and events. Through the years, these have always been fully sponsored and funded by local businesses here in town. Faces of local people I grew up knowing and loving as they supported so much of the events of my childhood that gave me the greatest memories and made me who I am. And these people are heroes to this community. Now, as a parent, I see those same faces rising up and supporting our kids and helping to build the programs that help the cities, children, and youth grow and discover who they are, the very things that make our small towns so great. My son is a product of the giving nature of one of those businesses at risk with this decision. The Taylor family has supported my son for 3 straight years in the FFA organization. This has given him confidence, responsibility, and helped him to see the bright future he has ahead of him that he was shy and apprehensive of before. But not only do they help him and many other FFA teens in financial support, but like many of the other events such as football, basketball, Strive for Port 5, and many others, they are in the stands and in the bleachers cheering them on, and when they see them in the grocery store or at Walmart. That's what this small town is all about. They're an incredible family who have busted their tails for all that they have, and that's why they are such an incredible foundation to this community. To take away all they've worked for is a crime, and to take that away will hurt this community greatly. We are a great small town. Let's keep the things going that help make our community so strong. Thank you.
All right, no, this one, sorry, thanks. So I have 2 letters to read that we received. They wanted to be read into the public record, so I'll start with this one, but I don't think I'll get through the end because I'm going to have you time me. I'll speak quickly. Dear Mayor and Council, it's reported that the idea of allowing only one hauling company to do business in Cottonwood has been overwhelmingly rejected twice before by the citizens in 2010 and 2015. The dozens of Cottonwood residents I've spoken to are all concerned about the lack of proper maintenance of city streets and the following factors. First, all the cities I've lived in considered maintenance of city infrastructure to be one of their primary responsibilities. I have firsthand knowledge of this, for I've been a sworn city official and citizen advocate. The highest priority of resources allocation should be putting taxpayer money into things which include the greatest number of things from which the greatest number of taxpayers would benefit most. The 2 preceding points obviously include roads, sidewalks, etc. For the city to abrogate its responsibility for road maintenance and attempt to mitigate the destructive results by banning only some of the businesses that use heavy trucks seems unethical and dishonest. Another essential factor brought up by many Cottonwood citizens is that while we see virtually no street maintenance, which would benefit everyone, the airport, which provides effectively no discernible benefit, financial or otherwise, to local businesses or residences, wastes $320,000 a year, money that should be used to benefit the citizenry. And it seems that drain on taxpayer funds will unjustifiably increase by millions of dollars the next few years. If the city decides to allow only one waste removal company to operate on city streets, the results, intended and unintended, will be disastrous for a number of reasons. 1, many of us as citizens feel that giving one company a monopoly is unethical. We can't support it. 2, you will cause the loss of likely 100 good local jobs and hardship of destruction of other businesses. 3, if waste management is not chosen, most of us are convinced they will cause the city taxpayers exorbitant expense and prolonged litigation, which would likely be similar in cost to what would be incurred if the city were to just accept the responsibility, reprioritize, and fund the ongoing stage-by-stage proper maintenance of all the streets. 4, while the weight of trash haulers' trucks does cause more wear and tear than most other vehicles, banning trucks of 2 companies will likely provide minimal reduction of wear compared to the significant wear and tear caused by the much greater use of the streets by passenger cars and other trucks, daily pervasive use by commercial delivery trucks and others. Also, wear and tear cannot be halted. Proper maintenance must still be addressed. Caveat, I'm going to name some names because it is necessary. There are 3 major players involved. Taylor Waste is a family-owned, local regional company based on observed and reported evidence. They are very responsible to their customers and the city. They have a broad residential base in Cottonwood. Patriot was sold to a corporation, and some no longer consider them a local business. I have no personal info on their sense of responsibility and responsiveness. They have a residential customer base in Cottonwood that appears less than Taylor Waste. Waste Management is a huge national corporation. There are many instances reported where they violated ordinances with their trucks, often exceeding weight ratings and street load limits. Thus, I feel they are relatively unresponsive to civic needs. They have an observed residential customer base in Cottonwood that is relatively mute. Thus, the responsible answer to the problem of deterioration of city streets is for city government to accept their responsibility for proper street maintenance and correct their prioritization in the use of taxpayer funds. You can't cut me off, I'm going to keep going. To reduce inappropriate spending on non-essential tasks that do not provide the greatest benefit to the majority of the population. Responsibly yours, Don Windmiller. What? Sorry, I just read it twice. You got 6 minutes. Sorry. All right, thanks for being here. Double dipping. So, dear Mayor Linsky,
We are writing this letter objecting to the proposal that the City of Cottonwood selects only one garbage hauling firm to pick up garbage in the city limits. We do not think that city government should be restricting the free enterprise system at work. Competition makes all of us better in our endeavors. We have been very satisfied with Taylor Waste picking up our garbage at our retail commercial offices located in the city. If the city wants to select one garbage hauling firm, then what is stopping the city to select only one construction firm, one building contracting firm, one engineering firm, and the list goes on and on. All of these firms have many vehicles that travel on the city streets. If the concern is use of city streets, then the City of Cottonwood is probably one of the largest users of city streets with all its fleet of vehicles on the streets every day. Also, the city's Verde Links Transportation Department, running dozens of vehicles, heavy-duty vans and buses every day, causes probably more wear and tear on the city streets than any private business. In closing, we respectfully ask that the City Fathers do not restrict commerce in our local community. Competition makes all of us more efficient and productive in our businesses. Signed by Mary Beth Grosetta and Andy Grosetta. And we're out of blue forms, but just by a show of hands, are there any brave souls here that are in favor of the city going out for an RFP? No, okay. Just curious. I did receive some emails of support for going out for an RFP and looking at the single hauler method. I think I received maybe 4 or 5 emails. Overwhelming majority were from folks like you who are opposed to it. But if they're here this evening, I doubt that they would want to stand up against this crowd and speak in favor of single hauler method. But thanks everyone for being in this evening. So stick around. Council's going to deliberate. Maybe ask some more questions of staff, and then we'll try to provide some direction to management so we can move forward with this one way or the other.
Thanks for letting us speak.
You're welcome. So, Council, how would you like to proceed?
So for me, this really, historically, people who support something or people who aren't against something or don't have a problem with something, historically they don't show up. I mean, we saw the same thing with TVR. Tons of people support it, but they don't show up, during that work session. It's always the people who oppose. I've been out talking to people, and there are people who do approve of it and agree with it. We did receive some emails for it. I use Taylor Waste, and I was very disappointed in Taylor Waste when I got that letter. I asked my neighbors who have both of the other 2 haulers if they got a letter from either Patriot or Waste Management, and they did not. This seems to be a rally around Taylor Waste thing, and I'm okay with that. But my question is, what if Taylor Waste wins the bid? Are you all still mad then, or are you clapping and happy because Taylor Waste won it, and now Taylor Waste will have the entire community? Who here has Patriot as their hauler? Who here has Waste Management? In my opinion, Mayor, there's nothing wrong with going out to an RFP and getting the results. And we don't have to choose one hauler. At that point, we can stop. We don't have to go with a national company if that's not what we want to do. I do think we can save the citizens of Cottonwood money, except for maybe Cottonwood Ranch, because what a lot of you don't know is Cottonwood Ranch is getting a hell of a deal, and I live up there, so I'm getting a hell of a deal. They're paying a lot less than some of the rest of you who have Taylor Waste. I think that if we look at Clarkdale, they're paying $9. Yes, they're charging a $9.25. I'm trying to scoot back so it quits echoing. $9.25 service charge. My understanding from our city manager is we wouldn't have to charge maybe a small administration fee. We wouldn't have to bring any employees in. We could probably roll it in with the water bills and then the utility bills that are already going out. So if we can get a contract for $9, maybe Cottonwood tax on a couple dollars, prices are going down for everybody. I support going through the RFP process.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members want to speak? Sure.
So I wrote my own letter so that I wouldn't flub this, but a lot of the things, some of the things I'm going to say in here were based on the emails that have been coming in. This conversation didn't start at 6 o'clock tonight. It started a little over, almost 2 weeks ago. It's been coming in. And there's been a lot of comments made in those letters and emails that are not going to be made publicly here face to face. And I'm going to address those. There were some of those intimations a little bit here. One was a little bit more charged than the others, but I'm starting from a neutral position on this. I'm not decided on this one way or another. And if it moves beyond tonight, I won't make a decision or know where I'm at until the very end. So I'm starting from that neutral position, and I see both sides have merit. Okay, I'm a free market capitalist to the core. I served in the military to defend it, and I've made my living here very well for the last 15 years on free market capitalism. I'm also an elected official that's charged with the stewardship of the city's infrastructure and finances, balancing the best use of these resources along with the will of the citizens of Cottonwood. There have been many emails and letters and phone calls weighing in on the issue. Some of them have been opposed to the consideration of using a single hauler for trash disposal, and that's perfectly acceptable and encouraged. What greatly disturbs me is they have also contained accusations of corruption and collusion so as to benefit and enrich a particular provider. Members of the city council and city officials. I very much take offense at the intimation of this and the motivation behind our considering this issue. This is not the council and management of the preceding decade. We have a new council and we have a new management. And I'll tell you, everybody on this dais sacrifices their time and energy to do this for no personal benefit of their own. I'll vouch for every one of them, okay, because they truly care about this community and generally want to make decisions that benefit the citizens, the businesses, and the employees of the city to the best of their ability. Some arguments were that if the city hires only one trash provider, that company would have the freedom to raise rates and provide substandard service at will. Personally, I've been a longtime customer of Taylor Waste, over 12 years. When I lived in a small gated neighborhood, I paid to pave the road. And I talked to Taylor Waste, and we made a decision that we were going to use Taylor Waste only on that road to keep the wear down on that road, and we all got a discount for doing that. This was done to protect our investment in the road. So I already know that they do negotiate different rates with small blocks of people, that the economy of scale we're talking about here in Cottonwood likely guarantees a better rate than what you're now paying. As for customer service, our strategic plan, as envisioned by council and implemented by the city manager, is focused on a culture of customer service, not only from city employees and staff, but from our contractors and vendors. They are all held to and accountable to a high standard. Another assumption is that one of our current providers initiated this, and some have come to the conclusion that it's Patriot, others that it's Waste Management, and the decision's already been made. This is a false assumption. I know very well that this suggestion was brought up by residents of neighborhoods that have to deal with the nuisance of 3 different providers coming through their neighborhood every week and knowing that their roads are wearing prematurely as a result. I did not bring this up for discussion. I did not support that. I didn't oppose it, and I'm not terribly thrilled about being up here talking about it, but that's our job. As far as creating a monopoly when it comes to municipal services, you don't get a choice on who provides your electricity, your natural gas, your water, even before the city took that over. You didn't have a choice without moving, where there was a different water provider. You don't get a choice in sewer or local bus service. Statistically, I don't know how to say this, I would hope that everybody here would be just as passionate about fighting something at the national level, and that's single provider health care. And I dare say we're getting close to that possibly happening. Then you're not going to have a choice. You're going to have one health care provider, and that's going to be the federal government, and it's 1/5 of our national economy. By all means, please use that energy to go after that one. Some have claimed that our local residents would lose jobs. And I'll tell you, when this subject came up, my vision was this would be a local company, a local provider. And it would possibly mean more jobs for City of Cottonwood residents and add to our local economy. and certainly not result in fewer jobs. I still lean that way, but I'll have to say I am very disappointed by the campaign initiated by Taylor Waste and perpetuated by the president of the Chamber of Commerce. This seems to be biased towards torpedoing this entire discussion and propagating unfounded assumptions before it even gets off the ground and we can sit here and meet and talk about this. Our job is to take all of these opinions and the information in for consideration. Comments and concerns are always important to the City Council, and I would encourage you to send them to us on this or any other matter. However, I would suggest that when doing so, that you keep it civil, not include inflammatory and accusatory assumptions, which do not lend any legitimacy to the other comments. Thank you.
It's a hard one to follow up on, but.
Well, and I respectfully disagree with most of the points raised by Councilmember Matthews. And I'm going to start right off the bat with supporting our local business owners who fight for their right to operate their business in this community. I also want to thank our Chamber of Commerce president for supporting our local business owners. And I do respect that you are out there doing what I consider to be your job by trying to protect businesses. I don't think that anything I'm going to say tonight is going to be any surprise to my fellow council members or to staff or our city manager. I think at the April meeting I was very clear. I support free enterprise and I'm very strongly against this single hauler initiative. I think moving forward to the RFP process denigrates the democratic process. I don't think that the single hauler initiative is an effective tool to reduce the wear and tear on the roads. And I don't think that the council or the city should sacrifice the community's right to choose who picks up their trash. As representatives, as we heard tonight, and frankly, all of you said it much better than I ever could, we were elected and or appointed to represent you. I've received many emails, I've received many phone calls, text messages. Somebody even stopped me walking down the street. Multiple people have stopped me walking down the street to let me know that they strongly oppose this single hauler system. You have spoken, and personally, as your representative, I also strongly oppose single hauler. For all the reasons we heard tonight. This is the third time that this issue has come before council, and it has been just as strongly opposed each time. This topic should be disposed of once and for all, and I do mean that pun. I don't think that city staff, these comments that we've heard about monitoring customer service, I don't think that we have the time, the manpower, or the energy to monitor customer service of a private business, and frankly, that's not the role of the city. I'm going to end my comments here, but again, thank you to everybody that came out tonight to voice your opinion, also those of you who couldn't be here tonight but who emailed. And again, I do support not moving forward with the RFP and letting things remain the way they are.
Okay, well, I'm going to, everybody hear me? Piggyback on what Vice Mayor said. Is that better? Okay. I take my job as an appointed official at this point very seriously in all aspects of it. First and foremost, as a representative of the people, because that is, you guys are the ones that elect us. I know that council appointed me, but I still take that very seriously as your voice. It's very clear to me that the preponderance of opinion is against the single hauler, as I heard from 33 people before tonight, and then all of you here opposed, and only 6 for. And so, all of the arguments for notwithstanding, the voice of the people seems very clear that we want to protect choice and free enterprise and local businesses. And so I would not be in favor of going out for an RFP.
What I would like to do, since we have no one here that was in favor of the single hauler, I want to put out the word that I'd like to talk to you. You can leave your number and name with the city clerk, and I'll get back to you, because I think it's, we heard tonight one side of it. I'd like to hear the other side of it before I make a decision. general public, whether they're watching or listening or the paper's going to write this down, whatever, just call the city clerk, tell her to get the name and number of the people who are willing to talk to me, and I would like to talk to them before I make a decision.
Okay. Mr. Hulse?
It's been interesting listening to the comments tonight, and I've been reading a lot on Nextdoor. All of the comments, or the majority of them, were negative. Some of them were very abusive towards other writers who were making comments. I'm concerned. The idea is to provide you with quality roads. We can't control commerce. We can't tell trucks, we can't tell cars where they can drive. I don't know if the trash haulers are actually causing all of the problems in the city of Cottonwood, but I have not heard anyone tonight tell this council what we might do to be able to provide you with the quality roads that you want based upon your comments tonight. You want free enterprise, you want free choice. I agree with you. I want free enterprise, I want free choice. I just came down from Flagstaff this morning to be here tonight. I drove on I-17, bump, bounce. Every time I hit a rut, all I could think is, well, there's another 100 miles off those $10,000 tires I just put on my truck. Gee, isn't that nice? Now, the state can't pay to fix I-17, and the city of Cottonwood can't pay to fix our roads. Would somebody give us, as a council, some direction on how you would like to proceed with the condition of your roads and how to maintain them? It would be an interesting side from saying, well, I like my free enterprise. I do too. I also like to have a nice road to drive on. And to do that means maintaining it. You should be aware that we don't have an abundance of money to take care of all of the needs for the city of Cottonwood. We're doing a fabulous job with what we have. And I'm, like Councilmember Hodeggy, interested in hearing the other side. And I would also be interested in hearing from you folks, how do we pay for the roads? How do we maintain them? How do we control what happens in our city? Or do we control? Do we just say it's a free-for-all? I've heard several different ideas about drugs and abuse and so forth, but I have not heard any suggestion. How do we maintain our streets? Thank you.
Thank you.
And respectfully, I think we heard some very good suggestions. We heard many people say, you know, there were comments that the sales tax was increased, and we dedicated, or we promised, this council promised to dedicate a large portion of that increase to improving our roads and infrastructure. Personally, I think our roads are in the condition that they are now because of years of inappropriate or inadequate funding for infrastructure maintenance by prior councils. I don't think that the answer to those years of funding decisions should be made at the sacrifice of the people's choice. We heard tonight people saying we want the freedom to choose, and we will pay more in order to protect that right to choose. We also heard several very reasonable folks who said, we think it's a good idea to just walk our trash cans across the street. Why can't we try that as an option? So, Councilmember Hulse, I hear what you've said, but I do think we've heard some very good and viable solutions, including people saying we're willing to pay to preserve our right to choose.
Okay. Any other council members want to chime in? No? Okay. So first, thanks to everyone for coming out tonight. Thanks for the folks that emailed but could not come in. It's been a tremendous showing. I wish we could get this kind of traction for the $74 million budget that we approve. It'd be great to have this kind of input from the community. But this does come up again and again. Like I said, I've talked about this twice before on this council. We do have new council members coming. We take our cue from you, and we meet annually to do our strategic plan. and I kind of opened up with talking a little bit about this, but I'll just go into a little bit more detail. We're trying the best that we can, and you can tell we're not 100% united on this issue, but we're doing the best we can to fulfill our strategic plan as dictated to us by you. And we're doing it on very limited resources. In Cottonwood, if you don't know, we only have sales tax. And for all the folks out there that support local private business, and I'm a local private business, we have 3 council members up here that are local private businesses. It's absolutely critical and important that you support your local businesses, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. So we're sales tax based. Please consider that next time you click send when you're shopping on Amazon and everything else, because that has a tremendous impact on our sales tax revenue here in Cottonwood, and that's what we use to maintain, to build new infrastructure, to keep our city running on your behalf. We have a high level of service that we provide. We have a very high demand of service that's put upon us by the citizens. You want nice roads and you want a nice city to live in. We all want those things. So again, it's difficult. We have very, very limited amounts of tools. We don't have property tax, we just have sales tax. One of the options that's before us is to consider a single hauler for waste pickup. And like Mr. Matthews said, there are many things that we don't get to choose, and utilities is typically one of them. It's an option that we have. It's something in our toolbox that we can use to try to fulfill some of the obligations of our strategic plan and the goals set out by the community. So I would be in favor of moving forward with an RFP process. It's nothing set in stone, but it's another way to educate ourselves and educate the community on the pros and cons of this. Right now we have some facts and figures up. We are speculating to some degree. We don't really know what the cost savings would be. They could be tremendous, and it could put more money back in your pocket. It could provide for cleaner neighborhoods. It could provide for better e-waste pickup, better recycling options that we don't currently have. There may be many benefits, but I don't know because we haven't really explored that. I'm at least willing to explore that on your behalf. I think it's the responsible thing to do. It is very difficult to talk about, and I've been in your office, Mr. Taylor, and we've sat and talked about this. I'm not going to disclose who my trash company is, but it's very difficult to think about putting a company out of business. And if it were my company, I would do exactly what you did. I would do direct mailings, and I would rally the troops, and I would do everything, and I would build this cohort of support. So this is not an easy decision for me to make either, but it is my responsibility to weigh out all the options before us and try to do the best that we can to preserve our infrastructure and provide a better quality of life. So for what it's worth, I am in favor of exploring an RFP, no strings attached, just as a way to get some information back to us so we can digest it, have more community discussion, and maybe come to some decision on this. It was a brave council years ago. I wasn't on, it was right before I got on, that decided to purchase the private water companies. There were 5 or so in town, 3 big ones. Also met with a lot of controversy. Mr. Horton, you were there. Mr. Hodeggy was on council at the time. I believe you were mayor at the time. And there have been some bumps in that road of owning and operating the water system. But I can say that I'm proud of the city of Cottonwood for taking over what was free enterprise before and doing a great job on your behalf in preserving that system and making sure that our natural resources are very well preserved and intact. We're pumping, I believe, 30% less groundwater than we were previously. We have put in a lot of new infrastructure. If you noticed, well, you don't notice because most of it's underground, but we really have done a tremendous job, which couldn't have been accomplished by free enterprise. And I think that's the reason why many communities do operate their own utilities. That's the reason why you look around the community or the state and the country, and you do see that many communities do. And I think the reason is there can be increased efficiency, and it can be a better way to preserve our infrastructure. So for what it's worth, like I said, I'm just rambling on here, but I am at least willing to take that next step and seek out an RFP, request for proposals. And I don't know if that gives you the direction that you need tonight.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Council, it actually doesn't. There were a couple people who did not say move forward or not move forward. Couple, I'm very clear, and so one council member asked to delay, moving forward until he got input. So right now, I don't have clear direction. If someone that did not,
so that's the only thing I didn't mention. So I am, like I said, I have not decided on this, and I will not until the end. Given the opportunity to shut this down at any time we don't like it or feel comfortable, I would like to continue to move forward and explore this.
And folks, I'd like to remind everyone too that this will continue to be an ongoing conversation. I don't think we're ever going to definitively say we're done exploring options on ways to stretch your tax dollars. This is one of those options that we have looked at many times in the past, and there are many other things that we've looked at many times in the past. But we really do rely on you to help us solve those problems. So I know you all had an open invitation to contact us, help us solve some of the big issues that we face on our limited resources. And this kind of community dialogue is as sometimes painful as it can be, although you guys were a great crowd. It can be a challenge, but it is really important to get that input from you. So thank you.
thank you, Mr. Mayor, I have direction now.
Okay.
We'll bring something back in the future.
Okay. Nothing will come out of left field, and we'll make sure that everybody is well informed on whatever decision or whatever steps we take moving forward. So thanks everyone for being here tonight. We're going to close the floor, but we'll come to you after the meeting, okay, sir? I would go ahead and move to adjourn.
Second.
Mayor made the motion, Vice Mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.